Let's go to the phone lines now and speak to Peter McMeno, because the New Patriotic Party has raised concerns over the decision by the Electoral Commission to transmit election results electronically from the polling stations to the national headquarters. According to Mr. Peter McMeno, who is the campaign manager of the NPP, the EC has not been able to convince the country why it intends to introduce e-transmission of polling results in December. He's joined us on the phone lines for some clarity. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon.
To start with, what system do we use currently in transmitting results to the Electoral Commission's headquarters?
Well, in the 2012 elections, the results were faxed to the Electoral Commission's strong room. And the results that were faxed were summary results from constituencies. You know that the Electoral Commissioner is the returning officer for presidential elections.
Right.
And presidential elections are held in 29,000 polling stations. So the results from the 29,000 polling stations has to be at the commissioner's desk to be able for the collation and declaration of the results to be made. So if the results then in 2012 were done summary or in summary form, then there was some mishaps on it. It was difficult to know which particular polling stations they came from. No wonder that the Supreme Court in its ruling directed that some reforms should be made and that results should be made available to the commission or the commissioner, who is the returning officer. The results should be made to her from all the 29 polling stations. Now, if the electronic transmission will deal with this, how is it going to deal with it? Because I know that there are some polling stations in this country where no mobile telephony or internet services are available to enable the transmission, the electronic transmission, to be effective.
But in this day and age, where there are those who actually thought that this was a brilliant idea, you seem to be kicking against it because there is the possibility of some infrastructural challenges in especially the remotest of places. But generally, is it a bad idea?
Well, I'm not saying it's a bad or good idea. That could be determined when it is subject to a debate and discussion so that we're able to smoothen the rough edges. After all, when Kenya did it, it was rough. So it had to take the Orange Democratic Movement, led by Raila Odinga, to take the matter to the Supreme Court in the form of an election petition because the electronic transmission failed.
Right.
Recently, it had failed in Ecuador, where the electronic transmission was hanging for 2 weeks after the voting. And it has also occurred in Mexico. So what we are saying
but
is
Mr. McMeno, is this the first time you're hearing about this, or it has come up at an IPAC meeting, or the EC has made the various stakeholders aware that they are considering this particular alternative?
Well, I saw this as an advert in the Daily Graphic about 5-6 months ago, inviting tenders for submission to tender for electronic transmission of results for the Electoral Commission. So at one IPAC meeting under other matters on the agenda, I raised the issue that I have seen this advert in the Daily Graphic, but we don't know the details. And we need better and further particulars of the electronic transmission.
But when you raised it, what did the EC say?
That they will write to us with the details. But to date, we haven't seen any details. More so, the elections that is coming up, the law that we're going to use for the elections, the CI 75, which has been amended to CI 94 and currently lying in Parliament, does not have any regulation on electronic transmission of results. So the step or that stage in the entire electoral process is not backed by any law.
Okay. So have you then gone on to raise these concerns with the Electoral Commission? To at least within
I raised it
time.
as IPAC. I have raised it as subsidiary legislation level when we were discussing the new law, and I found out that there is nothing on it to cover electronic voting because I had seen it in the Daily Graphic as an advert. Wow. I raised it, and I didn't get any answer.
Okay. All right. We would at least speak to the EC also to get their position on it. But what alternatives would you propose, just in case the EC said they were only thinking about it, not to implement it? But if the NPP has an alternative, or you have an alternative as a Ghanaian,
what I think we should do as a people is that elections and electoral management bodies, one of their key values is openness and transparency. So the EC must be open and transparent in all its activities.
Right.
You see, electronic transmission demands, apart from the tender, there should be exhibition for Ghanaians to see and test what the various companies are bringing to us. I have seen or attended an exhibition of potential companies in Kenya, where all the Kenyan media and the Kenyan public were invited to come and see companies that are bidding for technology in their election.
Right.
So in election organization, transparency and openness is key. Okay. That's what we are demanding. Okay. Inclusiveness is key. You cannot hide some people in a room and leave the others in a blind side when you are dealing with election issues. So these things must be debated, particularly by Ghanaians through our representatives in Parliament. Then we all look at the rough edges and the smooth edges and then move forward.
Take a decision. Okay. We are grateful for your time and the clarity you've put to this issue. Peter McMenu, is the lead of the NPP's campaign team, and was raising concern, or has raised concerns about the seeming decision by the Electoral Commission to transmit election results electronically, or the e-transmission of results. But the EC has not said whether or not they are going to be adopting the system in the December polls. We'll get their position on this and certainly keep you updated.